winning one, of course. This class is going to be today and also tomorrow, God willing, we finish it up. For today, I'm going to take us through the entire concept of CV and whatever it entails to put together a CV or to have a CV. And then tomorrow I'll focus on how to write a winning CV. And so for today, for the sake of those of us who are not privy to what a CV is, we will go through the entire subject. But tomorrow, you will look at the do's and don'ts in writing a CV and how to actually get a winning CV. We will also get opportunity to ask all our questions tomorrow, God willing. So today too, you may not be able to ask questions today. And so I'll beg that if you have questions, you will save it for tomorrow, because that will be the essence of tomorrow's class, to give you all the tips, what to do and what not to do in writing a CV, and also to address all your questions. I would also want to mention that as part of the class, we will learn why it is important for us to get a certificate for some things like what we are having right now. But then this class you will only be able to receive a certificate if you if you are online right now, and then if you also join us tomorrow. And at the end of the session, I mean today and then tomorrow, if you are able to put together a CV for the team to review, then you can secure yourself a certificate for this masterclass. Yes, so going straight to business of CV writing. My slide is disappointing, but I'm sure you'll fix it. A few seconds, please. Good. So finally, I'm able to get it to move. And so this is our first slide for the evening. And so because we are tackling CV, we must understand what a CV is. So the first slide is talking about what a CV is. If you look at the right side of the screen, you will see a document where I have written in red sample CV. The aim of that document there is not supposed to, you are not supposed to strain your eye to see the details on that paper, but just to let you know what a CV looks like. And that is why I put it there. So if you are straining yourself to look at whatever is on that screen, please do not strain your eyes to see, just to let you know that this is what we'll be talking about for the day. But the word curriculum vitae, which is abbreviated as CV, is of Latin origin. And in Latin, it is translated as the course of one's life. So the life you've been living so far, if you are supposed to have a summary of it, that is what is briefly referred to as CV. But we, this evening, or a CV is not interested in everything you have been doing in your life up to this point. We are not interested in the number of times you jumped your senior high school wall to get outside. We are not interested in the number of minutes you spent on the phone talking to someone. We are not interested in all the other things that you've been doing, with the exception of some key things that an employer or a reviewer would need to be able to give you a position or give you an employment. And so it's the course of one's life, but definitely not everything. And so for CV, we are looking at a summary of your education, your educational background. We are also looking at your experience as a person in terms of your work. We also be looking at your skills that you possess, your accomplishments and other things. And these things that we are looking at, the summary of them it's often put in a document. And once in a document, it is known as a CV. So a summary of your education, your experience, your skills, your accomplishments being put in a structured document is what is known as a CV. I'm going to emphasizing on the word structured because if you take a paper and decide to write a summary of your education and decide to write a summary of your experiences and your skills accomplishments anyhow, it may not be called a CV. And so this evening, understand that a CV has a particular format or it is structured. However, the structure of a CV is not rigid. It's not so much rigid that if you don't go by it, it means you don't have a CV. I can hear some background noise. Please try and mute your microphone when joining. You're the one that we are hearing your feed. Please kindly mute your microphone for us. Good. So although a CV has a structure or a format, it is not so rigid that you cannot do anything about it. The way we have 1, 2, 3, you know, it is in order, and you cannot go like 1, 2, and go to 4. A CV is not like that. For a CV, at times there has to be some modifications, and that is why we do not have a typical kind of CV, one type of CV, such that if all of us here are supposed to showcase or present our CVs, although it has a format, we are going to see subtle or mild differences in our CVs. And that is the room that a CV gives. It's not so rigid. So please put in your mind that everything that we are going to discuss here, you can decide to add certain things to your CV that may not be found in your colleague's CV. Now, before we proceed to learn what a CV entails, I want to also spend some time to talk about a resume and a CV, because often you find people asking you to present a resume instead of a CV, and this presents a difficulty because you wouldn't know what to present. And so I'll spend the next few minutes to explain or take my time to explain what a resume is and what a CV is. I've already talked about CV, but to compare it to a resume, we would have to look at the length of the document we are looking at, the content, what is inside that document, and what that document is going to be used for. And so a resume differs from a CV based on the length of the document that you have, what you have inside that document, I mean the content, and also what you are going to use that document for, which is the purpose. Based on these three things, a resume may differ from a CV. I would have to mention that in some jurisdiction or in certain cases, you have the person using the word resume to mean a CV and using the word CV to also mean resume. And in that sense, we cannot tell unless the person says they are the same. But in some situations, people refer to resume as CV and CV as resume. But they differ based on their length, their content, and also the purpose for which that document is going to be used for. So in terms of length, you realize that a CV on a normal day is longer or is lengthier and more detailed than a resume. And so while the minimum number of pages of a CV could be 2 pages, for an undergraduate student or a recent graduate, your CV should be at least 2 pages, or maybe at most 2 pages. You shouldn't have less than a page CV. But when you say a resume, then the maximum number of pages we are talking about, I mean the A4 sheets, it's 2 pages. But mostly a resume is just 1-page documents. Let's note that. And so in terms of the length, you have a CV be more detailed and more lengthier or longer than a resume. A resume often is just a 1-page document. At most, it should be 2 pages. Now, if you look at a CV, you'll be looking at the entire, as we said, the course of one's life. You'll be looking at your education, your teaching experiences, your research experiences, your publications, if you have any, presentations you have done, clubs and societies that probably you join. And if you look at the content of a CV, you can at a glance know that all these things are related to academia, or they are used for education purposes. And so anytime you have something to apply for in education or in academia, then they would often require or request for a CV instead of a resume. And so it is used for academic purposes, education, scientific or research positions. And those are purely academia or purely academic stuff. While a resume, because when jobs are opened or vacancies are opened, so many people are applying. Reviewers or your employers do not have the luxury of going through about 5-page documents or 2-3-page documents. And so your employer, your job, the person employing you for a particular job would just request for a resume. And on that resume, the person is interested in your education, the skills you have, and experiences that you have. And they request for that to know how suitable you are for that job you are applying. And so a resume is often used for a specific job application. A specific job application where after you have seen an advert or a call up for you to apply for something, that is when they request for a resume. So it's often used in job applications. That does not mean that certain jobs will also require you to present a CV. And so if you look at the differences between the two, you can see that a resume is a document that is extracted from a CV or a subset of a CV. And so this evening, we are going to focus on how to write a CV. And then when you are asked to submit a resume, no one will teach you how to write a resume. You would have to extract the resume, the important things with regards to the job you are applying for from your CV to get a resume. And so please understand this. When you see the two, don't be confused. Know what they are requesting for. And so you see the resume is brief and very concise, but a CV can have multiple pages. Some people's CV are those MPs when they are going to apply for their MP positions, their CVs are very long, very, very long. Yes. And after 4 years of school, your CV tends to also be longer. So let's understand the difference. If you have questions, like I said, you can note them. Tomorrow you have time to address all your questions. Now, why do you need to have a CV, or why do I need to have a CV? As the introduction by Prince, and as I've been speaking, I keep mentioning job applications. Anytime you have to apply for a job, one of the commonest documents employers request for your CV. Also, when you are going to apply for scholarships and grants, especially after your undergraduate study, if you are supposed to pursue postgraduate study, most of the schools or most of the admission committee would require you to submit your CV for admission. And so CVs are important for job applications, scholarship or grants applications. I would have to mention that in terms of even school applications, your CWA, for those of you in KNUST, for those of you in other schools, what we call GPA, may not be as even important as your CV. If you have a good GPA or whatever it is, first class or whatever it is, and you don't have a good CV, you may be turned down in terms of admission. The same way with job applications. And I'm going to mention why it is so. Also, CVs are used when you are applying for certain positions. Anytime you're applying for certain positions, you'll be required to present or bring your CV, just like we did in A-Zone when we needed volunteers to be part of the communications team. We asked you to submit your CVs before we could give you that role. Most of the directors had to submit CVs before we appointed them. And so when you are going in for positions, leadership positions and all that, your CV will be asked, will be requested. Now, note that CV on its own does not apply for a job or a scholarship alone. Usually, a CV will accompany a statement of purpose, that is for admission purposes, or what is called personal statement. And also for jobs, you'll be required to attach a cover letter. We've previously looked at a cover letter, but this session is purposely to look at a CV. And so note that your CV will be sent together with your statement of purpose, your cover letter, and other documents. Now, if you're applying for a job or an admission, your CV will be the very first opportunity for you to make a very good first impression to whoever is reviewing your CV or to your employer, because your employer may have not seen you before, but you would have your CV in front of the employer, and the employer sees you with your CV. And so you have to make a very good first impression to your employer. Once you lose that first impression, you may not even get a chance for you to be called to be interviewed. And so note that as you are preparing a CV, your CV is you. And so if you are a fine person, make sure your CV is fine. And your CV represents you very well. You can be very talented, you can be very good, very academically fit, intelligent, everything, skillful and everything, but your CV may not represent all the things you do. And so try and you make let your CV speak for you even before you get to your employer. Sometimes based on your CV, you even get the job even before you get to being interviewed or get to be called for interview. And so do not just write anything as a CV and throw it on your employer or your reviewer. It's an opportunity for you to make a very good first impression. Now, aside the job and the scholarships, what CVs are often normally used for? I recently shared an article about how a CV is important for you to know yourself better and your value. I've sat in a couple of interview panel as a panelist, and when graduates or applicants are asked how much they should be paid, they fumble to mention any value. And that is because they actually don't know their value. But see, if you have a CV, your CV will tell you how much you are worth. Not to boast of myself or to hype myself. Anytime I look at my CV, I see myself as someone who is beyond an employee, someone who is not supposed to be employed, but someone who is supposed to employ someone. Because all the skills an employer has, I see them on my CV. And so your CV should be able to tell you whether you are worth much or you don't worth much. Some of you will want to venture into entrepreneurship, and you will say, "Oh, as for me, I want to start my own job, so I don't need a CV." See, if you are going to fail in starting a job, you can see it from your CV because you may not see the qualities in you for entrepreneurship on that CV. And if you are going to excel in entrepreneurship, you should be able to see it on your CV because the skills for entrepreneurship should be glaring on your CV. And that is why I say having a CV helps you to know yourself very well. Now, a CV also tracks your personal development. Today, I was shocked. When I was preparing this lesson, I had to pull up my CV to be picking certain things from it. And I got to a portion I have titled courses, courses taken, or courses with certificate or something. And then I realized that the last course I took was in 2019, and that was when I was a TA on campus. Meaning that after I left campus as a teaching assistant, I have not taken any other online course. And that is what happens after school. The pressures after school will not allow you to have time to be doing online courses. And so I would advise all of you to be doing most of the skills training, most of the online courses now that you have time. Because now someone is paying your food, someone is paying your rent, and all other things. And so you should have enough time to do these online courses. Another important thing is that most of your campuses have free Wi-Fi. And so in terms of personal development, this is the time for you to really develop yourself. When I was on campus, almost every semester, I made sure I had completed one course on Coursera And my CV is an evidence to that. And I realized that from 2019, I've not been able to complete one single online course like I used to do when I was on way back on campus. Right from third year, almost every semester I was adding one course aside what I was studying in class to my CV. I'll complete it, excel, and I was able to do that. But after school, work will not allow you to do those things. So I'm advising you that if you have any medium or any chance to develop yourself on campus, please make sure that you do. And your CV will be able to help you track that. Now I'm able to track that I'm not learning as I used to learn. And so if you have a CV, it should be able to also tell you that you are not learning or you are not developing yourself. And so this is why you should have a CV. And I believe it is convincing enough that you should prepare a CV for yourself. Once again, this thing is misbehaving again. I'm trying to move on to the next slide. Good. So, sorry about that. Sections of a CV. I've been lamenting, we should get a CV, and all that. But what really goes on a CV, into a CV? For any CV, typical CV that you take, you will likely see all these features on a CV. But note that not all the sections I have listed here that are always necessary. The word is always. All the sections here are necessary, but they are not necessary all the time. And so even though I have listed them here, do not try and make sure that your CV has all these elements at all costs. In the course of the class, I'll be mentioning some other sections that are not even here. That means that a CV can have other sections, depending on what you are applying for and who you are. And so for any CV, you'll be seeing what is called a heading. And that heading will often consist of your personal details and your contact address. You will also be seeing section titles. For a CV, if you are going to talk about your profile, your objective, or your education, you should state on top of it that the next thing you are writing is your educational background. And so those things are called section titles. Now, a CV also have a profile, an objective, education, and the rest. I'll not waste my time to mention them. I know you can see them. And also that is what we'll be spending the rest of our time doing, to go through all of them, one after the other. Now, we will start with the heading. I mentioned that the heading is about your personal information and your contact address. Now, please, I know that you've been going for CV writing classes. I know this is not your first time, and so you are familiar with these things. But please pay attention to this, because upon reviewing your CV, often I have to do this first part for most of the CVs I've reviewed. And so when you take a CV, the most glaring thing on that document should be your name. And that is why when you look at this is an example of a heading. And so if you see that there are a lot of things here, but what stands out here is my name. Please note that I have added some qualifications to my name. These qualifications, it does not mean that when you also prepare a CV, you should add your qualifications. When I'm submitting my CV for something that is not related to optometry and my profession, these titles, I may take them away, or these qualifications, I may take them away. But for the purpose of the CV I created and what I was going to use it for, I had to bring these qualifications. If you also have them, you can also add it to your name so that it stands out on top. And that should be the most significant, the most glaring thing. It should stand out on all the things you have on your CV, your name. If you can't see anything on your CV at a glance, your name should stand out. And so your name should be very large, and the font size should be about 20 to